The X-H1 is a new breed of camera for Fujifilm. Though based on the same sensor and processor as the X-T2 and several other cameras, it's an entirely different beast. It represents a new flagship line for the camera maker, and at $1,900, it is also the most expensive model yet. So what do you get for that extra cash? As it turns out, quite a lot, starting with 5-axis in-body image stabilization. That's a bigger deal than you might realize. Back in February of 2016, in an interview with Fujilove.com, Fuji actually stated that sensor shift stabilization was incompatible with its XF lens mount due to concerns over how that type of system would negatively affect image quality. However, 2 years later, here we are with the X-H1 that advertises 5.5 stops of shake reduction from its internal stabilization system, and image quality is still really good. So how is this possible? We don't know. But does it work? Absolutely. This is the X-H1's key feature. The X series is really defined by the lenses, and since the beginning, Fuji has focused on producing high-quality, fast primes, none of which are optically stabilized. And being able to shoot those lenses with stabilization is really quite cool. And that one feature may be enough to lure some X-T2 or X-Pro 2 users over to the X-H1. One thing to note, we recommend setting stabilization to continuous. This way you get a stabilized view through the viewfinder or LCD. Otherwise, stabilization only activates when you take a picture. This might save a little battery life, but we prefer being able to get perfect framing by previewing the effect of stabilization before we take the shot. Stabilization is also really helpful for shooting video, which is another area where the X-H1 has made some pretty big gains. It can now shoot in both the standard Ultra HD 4K and DCI Cinema 4K, which is a slightly wider aspect ratio. Maximum bitrate has doubled to 200 megabits per second, but you're still limited to just 422 8-bit color, so this definitely doesn't match up to the likes of the Panasonic GH5 and GH5S, which record 10-bit video at up to 400 megabits per second. Still, this is easily Fuji's best video mode yet, and it does look really good. You can also now shoot F-Log straight to the SD card rather than only into an external recorder. And if you'd rather not bother with shooting a logarithmic tone curve, we don't blame you, the all-new Eterna film simulation, which is based off of Fuji's motion picture film of the same name, offers a great look for video, and for stills actually too. Unlike on the X-T2, you can now also use face detection autofocus while in video mode. This is certainly a big plus for YouTubers and vloggers, but in our experience, it was fairly unreliable. It would often lock on to other patterns, like things that just might be in the background, rather than our subject's face, even when it had a very clear shot. So hopefully Fuji can work out the kinks and fix this in a future firmware update. But you shouldn't think of the X-H1 as the video version of the X-T2. It is a better camera all around, with refinements to nearly everything, starting with the camera body itself. Yes, it's bigger and heavier, and that may be a deal breaker for some photographers, but that also means it's stronger and more ergonomic. It's made from a thicker magnesium alloy and has more robust weather sealing. Even the lens mount has been redesigned to be more durable. The body is also molded in places to fit into the grip, and when you put the two together, it feels like you're holding onto a single solid piece. It's really nice, and the grip itself even has this felted material on its top surface, and the locking screw has a nice resistance to it so that it turns very smoothly. Now, none of this is necessary, but it all contributes to a very premium feel. There is an attention to detail here that you just don't see from other manufacturers, at least not at this price point. There are also several functional improvements, like the top information display, or sub-monitor as Fuji calls it. Unlike similar displays on DSLRs, this one is fully customizable. You can choose which information shows up where. For example, we replaced the exposure mode indicator with the battery life indicator so that we could monitor the remaining battery life in all 3 batteries when we had the grip attached. And it will also display sort of context-sensitive information depending on what mode you're in, so whether that's still photo or video mode. The electronic viewfinder, which was already one of our favorites on the X-T2, has gotten even better. It's higher resolution, now at 3.69 million dots, and has a larger eye cup that makes it more comfortable to use. We also like how the control dials have more resistance, so you won't turn them by accident like you can on the X-T2. The rear LCD is the same, except it is now touch sensitive, which is nice, but we didn't really find that it was necessary given all of the direct access control on this camera. However, it does enable the new silent movie mode, which lets you control all of your exposure settings and start and stop recording from the touchscreen without having to use any of the physical controls. This sounds potentially useful, but in practice it felt a little clunky, and making adjustments using the dials was just faster and easier. The X-H1 is clearly Fujifilm's best camera yet, but it is also arriving at a time with some very strong competition. We can't help but feel that in some ways it's really just playing catch-up. Remember, the Sony a7 Mark III will put you into full-frame territory for just $100 more than this, and that's without the battery grip. That said, for anyone already in the Fuji camp, the X-H1 presents a very enticing upgrade. Particularly for fans of Fuji's prime lenses, it just makes sense. It is a more versatile camera than what's come before it, thanks to internal stabilization and a revamped video mode. It's also an incredibly well-designed and built machine, and after spending some time with it, it's easy to see why Fuji cameras have inspired such a loyal following. For more on the X-H1, make sure you head to digitaltrends.com for our full review.